and welcome to the Impostor Syndrome Files. I am so grateful that you're here. My name is Kim Menninger, and I'm a women's leadership coach. I started this podcast because as a lifelong sufferer of imposter syndrome and a coach who sees this in 98% of the women I meet, I wanted to take this conversation to a bigger stage, so to speak. Imposter syndrome is triggered by a lot of things, but two of the primary triggers are transitions and feeling different from those around us. Women in traditionally male-dominated environments experience these triggers on an almost daily basis, so it's only natural that we would feel this way. What compounds these feelings is the sense that we are alone. The belief that if we share our feelings, we'll expose our incompetence even further. So we carry it around like a deep, dark secret. I started this podcast because I want to put a stop to this nonsense and destigmatize imposter syndrome. Because we don't talk about it, we look around and assume that everyone around us has it all figured out, that we're somehow the exception to the rule, when in reality, we're all feeling this way. And when we can own that and say it out loud, we all benefit. Nobody more so than you. So thanks again for being here. If you enjoy it, please share it with others who might also benefit. Welcome, Erika. I am really, really excited to talk to you. We have talked a lot over the years, but we first of all, we never got a chance to see each other, which other people can't see right now, but we get to see each other. And we've never had a chance to really talk in depth about this kind of stuff. So I'm really excited to have you here. And I'd love for you to just tell us a bit about yourself before we jump in.
Sure. My name is Erika Janifer. I am an engineer and I've owned a consulting business, an engineering consulting business that focuses on infrastructure management services for the federal government and for municipal clients. And I mostly work in the wastewater space, but we're expanding into different types of infrastructure and social infrastructure like schools and hospitals. And we're looking to go international. So that's exciting.
That's very exciting.
Yeah. So, I'm in the DC area and I've been here almost 15 years. And I think that's pretty much sums it up. Originally from Philly. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so I want to get your take on imposter syndrome. Like, what comes up for you when you hear that term, and how has it affected you at all, if at all?
Sure. Well, I know in the engineering field, I think that there's a lot of conditioning when you're in engineering school. You have to be precise, you have to be exact, there's a lot of pressure to know exactly what you're talking about before you say it. There's not many, like abstract concepts. And so it becomes really difficult to, I think, make a mistake publicly. So when you go translate or you graduate rather and go into a working environment, I think you still carry that fear because at work, especially in an engineering environment, when I remember being an engineer coming out of school, I understand where the ball bearing is, or I understand how to analyze the ball bearing or how to analyze the circuit, but where is it on the bridge, or where is it in this device? There's a very, very steep learning curve, and there's a lot that you don't know. And so that feeling of having to know everything perfectly before you can speak up and before you can, move forward with your work, I think kind of carries over. So when I think of imposter syndrome and, thinking I'm a fraud, I think, you always, unless you have a very, very, very focused specialty, and you've given it some time, engineers are problem solvers and they solve all kinds of problems. So you always are going to have things that you don't completely know, And so I still find myself, being nervous because I don't maybe I don't understand a system perfectly, or, I don't have every answer on the tip of my tongue,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's so interesting because I've had this conversation for this podcast probably 50 times by now.
Oh, wow.
No exaggeration. But nobody has put it in those terms. And I think that's so fascinating because you're absolutely right. The precision, the accuracy that's required of engineering would naturally spill over into other elements and put that kind of pressure on you that everything has to be perfect, right?
Right.
I have to really study this and really understand this before I can have a conversation about it. Or, so are there ways in which you have been able to separate what the engineering piece requires in terms of precision and accuracy versus like what more of your business requires? And
now see, and that's where business school, I think, played a really important role, especially the executive program, because that program really taught me it doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes in business, it's the goal. It's not all of these other little steps that kind of lead up to the goal. So there is such a thing in business as it's good enough, it's close enough, Yeah. But I mean, it's a battle. It's not like I just got it, and I'm sure my teammates could probably, like, if they were here, they would probably say, Erika's really got that perfectionist spirit, but that's where it comes from. Just being able to, like, I'm trying to think of a good example. I'm doing a proposal now, and like, rather, the resumes, they don't have to be perfect, right? Like, yes, everything needs to be spelled correctly. Yes, everything, needs to be in the right spot for, the most part, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, we just need to jot down these notes so that we can get to the next thing. Job descriptions. I emailed you, I guess it's probably a month ago, and I'm like, I have this job description, and then I was afraid to post it because it wasn't perfect, and then I'm like trying to hire an attorney to read over it just to make sure there's no legal, that kind of thing. You just kind of have to, move forward and focus on the important things, and the outcome is, I need to hire somebody. Like, all these other little steps, like, if I make a mistake, if I, register the wrong thing, like, I'll fix it, but
I think that's a really important point too, because one of the strategies that I always talk about for managing imposter syndrome is leveraging your resources. Right now, you're a business owner.
Right.
For you, that means hiring people, right? But for people who are working in companies, it might mean just talking to a colleague in a different part of the company who has a different skill set than you do, or different expertise, right? And so not being so fully dependent on our own expertise for everything we do, but actually being willing to ask for help.
Yes, I agree. And prioritizing, my manager, he was pretty good. I'm thinking now, like, the man that hired me out of college, he was pretty good in helping me prioritize what was super important, which was what was kind of important, and like I said, sometimes it just takes for you to get a little overwhelmed in a good way, and it forces you to pick and choose what you're going to go over with a fine-tooth comb.
And the flip side of imposter syndrome that I have talked a lot about on this program is that that's really why we're as good as we are, right? It's most common among high achievers. It's that extra bit of pressure that makes us work that much harder, that keeps us feeling challenged, so it's a double-edged sword in many ways.
Yeah.
So I want to get real here, because you and I have talked about this before, right? You are in a male-dominated industry, right? You are a woman. You are a color.
Yes.
How does that affect?
Oh boy. Sorry, how does that affect
your experience with, like, how does the male dominated nature of your work affect your confidence level, or even just this whole experience?
Well, that's a big question. So I think, well, from my personal experience, it has been very difficult. And it's difficult because not only do you not have many examples to look to. I mean, we definitely do. I'm not saying that, but we don't, it's not as many. At least it wasn't as visible in my life. But more importantly, the males and the white males that I work with, they really don't.
Mm-hmm.
They really don't have any examples. And so, you know, they're not really sure how to relate. And a lot of, I think, subconscious biases are brought into the workplace. And, you know, that's really difficult to navigate. And that's what ultimately led me to start my own business. So I would say, you know, imposter syndrome can be exacerbated by the way that your coworkers relate to you, you know, the way that they speak to you, not so much the assignments that they give. That has never been my problem. Assignments and opportunities had never been my problems. It was more of just, you know, the ability to leverage resources, being given the resources that I needed to do the work. You know, that was always a fight. Yeah, I feel that was really the rub of it. You know, I felt like I was almost kind of treated like a workhorse. And, you know, you say, okay, well, everybody works hard. You know, I'm in consulting. Consulting hours are crazy. Yeah, but it's different when, you know, you can pick up the phone and somebody is there to provide support.
Yeah.
You know, like I can call on an admin, I can call on a marketing person, I can call on another engineer, and they're, you know, right there to help you. You know, that's a huge advantage and a huge difference, I think.
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously there's a lot of talk about psychological safety, a lot of talk about inclusion, but like what you're describing, the word that comes to mind for me is just lonely, right? I mean, work is hard. And
that's right.
When you don't have those natural relationships or social connections baked into what you're doing, and having a bad day, or you just want to, you know, bounce something off of somebody, and that is more available to men. Just
right. There's an automatic respect, an automatic respect of boundaries. That's there. And when you don't have that, that can really hinder your success. And then, you know, in the engineering field, you know, the social skill, we're not known for our social skills already.
You're an exception to that, Erika.
Thank you, but we're not known for it. So, you know, that exacerbates it as well. So, you know, I mean, the way I think that you know, and this is from my childhood, I think too, it's like what it does is it gives you excellent coping skills. It gives you grit, you know? Yeah. And I have that. I can say I definitely have that, you know, get knocked down 6 times, I get up 7 times. And, you know, that's really how you overcome, you know, is to not look for your value, your worth, your validation, your sense of accomplishment. It has to all come from you on the inside. You can't get that externally Because if you look for it externally, like in the environments that I've come from, that I've been working in, you'll stunt yourself, you'll stunt your career, because ultimately, that's what white supremacy is. It's, want to control how you view yourself and how you value yourself. Mm-hmm.
So for everybody listening right now, who's nodding their heads in agreement with you as I am, do you have any tips on how to do that? Because I think we're all in agreement, but because some of this happens at such a visceral level, it's so hard to not pay attention to what other people are saying or thinking.
Yes. So I would make a list of everything that you want to accomplish. Maybe I don't want to say for your whole career, but the next few years, we'll say, right? And you need to be very diligent about focusing on that list. You want to get your PE, you want to get your certification, you want to start your master's program, you want to gain experience in whatever area. I want to gain experience in stormwater management or wetlands delineation. And once you kind of, and I think it's important to work with a mentor, or a group of peers, and you guys kind of come up with your list together. It doesn't have to be huge, like 4 or 5 things. If you're working towards accomplishing those things on your list, no matter what's going on, with your manager, with coworkers, whatever it might be, you're doing okay. And then the other thing I would say to female engineers and to Black women in particular is don't be afraid to leave. Don't be afraid to leave, and don't be strategic, but I don't want to say don't be loyal to yourself. Be professional, but you don't have to be, loyal to a company in a way that makes you sacrifice yourself. And I think that that's women. A lot of what I've seen is, you're almost socialized into kind of like a wife role or like a eldest daughter role at work. And, don't let that affect you from, or affect you to the point where you don't take other opportunities, or if some place is uncomfortable or you don't like how you're treated or you don't like the culture or even just the vibe, put in your 18 months and find something else, even if it's seemingly lateral. Because one of the mistakes I made is I stayed too long and it became really toxic. And once it got so bad, it was difficult for me to leave because it affected me really bad. So it was difficult to interview. I felt like I had kind of like a stench, Yeah. So.
Oh, what you're saying is so relatable too. And I love that you're bringing up this self-empowerment piece, because I do think that so many women, people who are underrepresented, there's this feeling that I don't have choices, right?
Right.
I should just be grateful I have a job at all, especially in this moment of economic uncertainty. I hear that a lot too, for people of like, oh, well, I don't want to complain. I feel like I should just be, but no, you're absolutely right. If something is out of alignment with your values, if you're not being treated with respect, if you're not put in a position where you can do your best work and make a meaningful contribution, then you don't have to stay there.
Right.
And it sounds like an oversimplification, because I get that, you can't just snap your fingers and find something new. But I think even if it's a longer term goal to get out of the situation, the way I think about it is, number one, just the act of being out there looking for something new makes you feel more empowered psychologically, that you're doing it on your terms. And also use that time for whatever you can be doing to get as much from that opportunity. So the way I think about it is like you're on borrowed time, right? You've already decided I'm not going to stay here. I'm going to use this time to really invest in myself. I'm going to,
That's right.
Make the most of the projects I'm working on. So I'm building the skills that I need. Maybe I'll get the company to pay for training for me or so, something. So I feel like there's mutual benefit
Right.
by staying here.
Yeah. And I would just say again, like, just don't make it too long, like put yourself on a trajectory. And then don't be surprised, if people get upset when you exceed the expectations that they had for you.
That's a big piece of what we've been talking about too, is that imposter syndrome, there's a certain personal element to it that comes from within, but it is also a function of the expectations that other people have of us, or the perceptions that other people have of us.
Right. And that's what's so easy to internalize. Yeah. That's why I say, if you have the list, you know where you're at, what you're working towards. And that's something that, you can use to ground you.
Yeah. I think the focus is really, like you said, because if you don't know what your own goals are, you are much more likely to fall into the trap of looking to the people around you as
That's right. And you let your organization tell you what achievement is. And, if you work in a great place, then maybe that's, it works for you, but I don't want to sound negative, but chances are, if you're you're the only woman on a team, that's not going to work for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's not going to work for you. Yeah.
Now you took a very courageous step, right, of going out there on your own.
Oh.
How have things changed for you? I mean, do you feel, because I think in some ways, like we're talking about, you're freeing yourself from that system. And so, there's a psychological benefit that comes with that. But as a business owner, there's new pressures, right? And there's new stuff that comes up. Like, has this experience changed for you in your new capacity, or?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's gotten better. It's gotten much, much better. And things have gotten much clearer in terms of, who I am as a professional and what I have to offer. So, I mean, in that regard, I think imposter syndrome has reduced drastically. But I mean, I still struggle, because I feel like there's a level at which I would like to consult that I'm still not, 100% comfortable marketing myself at. But, one of the ways that I know that I'm in the right spot and working for myself is because it's a constant challenge. Like, it's never boring, and I'm constantly forced to confront things about myself, and in order to move forward properly, to where I know I should be. But I much rather have that as a struggle than have, than be like punching at a glass ceiling as my struggle. It's a different kind of struggle, figuring out, how am I going to market myself to, consult to the C-suite of United Technologies, than it is, begging to be put on a project at somebody else's company. Like, that's those are same thing, same kind of, do I believe in myself? Do I think I can do it? How do I package myself? How do I sell myself? But
and let me ask you too, because one of the benefits that I personally think about, and when you belong to an organization, you're not a business owner, and this has been my personal experience too, is that you're part of a team, right? And so there are at least other people around who understand what you're going through, and you can kind of get their opinions on things. And it's much harder when you're an independent business owner to get support, especially when you are questioning, like, am I doing this right? Right. Like, where do you get your support now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I have hired support. So I'm serious. I mean, I've hired coaching, I have hired like many vendor services, professional services, like legal services, accounting. And then I would recommend to, we're talking about business owners or just in general?
In general is great.
Oh, okay. So, I'm trying to think what else is like a really good source of support. All of my stuff is, like small business owner, but there's a women's business center in my county. And so I use their services a lot. Yeah. Yeah. That's a big one too. Because when you work by yourself, you just need people to kind of play things off of, discuss scenarios, strategize with,
Yeah, it's funny.
That's so important. I mean, you definitely miss that. Yeah. When you go out on your own. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when you're on the inside, at least this is what it's been for me, right? Everything looks like there's this very strategic way of doing things, and it's all really planned out, and all these great minds are behind it. And then when you're on the other side as a business owner, you realize like everyone's just making this stuff up, right? And so there's a lot of self-doubt that comes with it, because you're like, am I doing it right? Right? Like, what?
Yeah.
And so it is really important to have that support system of experts like you're talking about to fill in some of our own skills gaps, and people that we can turn to just say, am I on the right track here from your perspective?
Right. And, if you are looking for coaching to start a business, I mean, the Small Business Administration has a lot of, I wouldn't say program resources. It's almost like you could start your business before you actually start your business and have everything kind of set up and thought out. And
that's a great suggestion.
Yeah. And those relationships are really valuable too, and it's all free. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's nationwide. So anybody.
That's right.
That's
right.
US. Yeah.
But when I worked for a company, I had a few great mentors. So I always look for somebody that's older, like much older, like a generation ahead of me. That's one of my rules. Like I always look for that. And then I look for somebody, coming from an engineering firm, I tried to find people that really understood the business of consulting. More so than I aligned myself with people from like specific technical areas. And that's really served me well, through my career, like as I continued to work, and now, especially now that I'm on my own.
I love that you're saying that, because there's more vulnerability in seeking a mentor in an area where you don't have as much expertise, because there's the natural fear that I'm going to be exposed, right? If people figure out I don't know this stuff, right? So it's easier to find a mentor that's in your area that you feel like, okay, I can have an intelligent conversation about this, right? Like, so I think that's such a great idea, is to not choose mentors that are entirely in the same domain. Round it out.
Definitely. I mean, I've always looked to my peers to kind of figure out what's like certifications does everybody have, like what's the timing and like that kind of thing.
Right.
But if you have a mentor that can really give you like solid, what you're looking for is not so much a play-by-play, you're looking for like real concrete wisdom,
right,
about how to make decisions for your career, so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could talk to you all day, Erika.
Oh, that's so nice.
I love talking to you.
Thank you.
But as we wrap up here today, I just want to ask you like a closing question of what motivated you to want to tell your story, and what do you hope people will take away from it?
So I have a mini story. So I started with a new client in a new market, and they gave me a document that I'm familiar with, because I've probably written 25 of them. Maybe like 2 a year for every year that I've been working. I've written these documents. And so the client said, this document, you don't need to do much to it. It's already together. I just want you to go through, update it according to the latest regulations. And if you see anything, let me know. So, kind of in parallel, there was some other documents being delivered or being updated, and the client was not happy, screeching with frustration and irritation that we didn't understand their system, and what were we talking about? This is not the right kind of pipe. Should be this. And so, and I got this document that he asked me to update, and it was not what he said it was. Okay. It was not. It wasn't up to the standards that he led me to believe. But I kind of had to pull it completely apart to realize that. And so rather than just stopping, I kept going and kept going and kept going and kept going and kept going. And then I realized I had a moment, and I was like, this is imposter syndrome, like I'm afraid of what he's going to say to me. I'm afraid he's going to say, you don't really know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. We hired the wrong person. Mm-hmm. You're a fraud.
Yes.
Yeah. So it manifests in that way too. And so that's why I wanted to do the podcast, because I felt like, it's one thing to let imposter syndrome prevent you from trying. Imposter syndrome can also run you into the ground.
That's a really good way to say that.
And cause you to overwork and overgive. And that's just as detrimental, Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you were willing to do this with me. I know that there are so many people out there listening who are going to love what you have to say. And I am just really grateful. I'm grateful for our relationship all these years. And
likewise.
Conversation. Thank you.
Likewise.
Thanks again for listening today. If you're struggling with imposter syndrome and you'd like additional support, check out the show notes for more resources or contact me directly. I would love to help you. And if you'd like to tell your story, I would love to interview you. You will find my contact info in the show notes, so reach out anytime. Thanks again.